Hey y'all, welcome back to Victorious Venetia. Long time no see. This is my first video of the year. So yeah, I'm excited to be with you guys today. Today we're talking about how God's redemptive power is greater and stronger than our suffering. Now, this has been a challenging season, I'm sure for many people for various reasons. But it kind of seems like many of us are going through similar trials, and I know it's not just me, but I think that's all the more reason that we can have this conversation about God's redemptive power in the midst of our suffering, in spite of our suffering, and how He uses that for His redemptive plan. So that's what we're getting into, y'all. God's redemptive power is greater than your suffering. I was literally just, in my thoughts with the Lord, and stuff was clicking. And I was just like, let me write this down. Let me engage with this. And let me bring it to the peeps. So here I am. So first things first, Jesus is and was the lamb slain at the foundation of the world. What this means is that before Adam and Eve fell, before the serpent deceived Eve and enticed her to eat of the forbidden fruit, the first sin, God already had the solution, which is why Jesus was the lamb slain at the foundation of the world. Now, I know that can be confusing because it's like he was crucified before the world was even made. And to that, I will say that speaks to the vastness of God. So, God is also known as Alpha and Omega, meaning that He is and was present even before the world was created, even before He spoke the earth into existence. And it also speaks to how He's all knowing. So, the first sin, it didn't surprise God. Yes, there's consequences. There has been some significant ones as a result of the first fall. But God is so God that He saw fit to allow us to be, allow us to live, and also provide a solution for the rift that was caused by the first sin. And that solution was the crucifixion of Christ. So, just like God wasn't surprised that the serpent would deceive man, He isn't surprised by our situations. He isn't surprised by us falling into financial problems. He isn't surprised by the mental crises that we face, the loss of loved ones, the loss of jobs. He isn't surprised by our mistreatment or the abuse that many people experience. None of this surprises God. And I know that can be hard to think about because it's like, okay, God, if you're all powerful and all knowing, then why would you even allow these things to take place? Why wouldn't you have figured out a way for me to not have to experience that, for me not to have to go through that? And again, that's a valid question. So we always have to go back to the start when we have these sorts of conversations because it's important to know God's intent. His intent was for us to rule and reign with Him. His intent was for us to be in constant communion with Him, for us to be filled with love, for us to share in His likeness and be creative and preserve the earth. However, the consequence of sin disrupted a whole lot. And that's important to stick a pin in because we all have free will. And we'll come back to that. But God already had a solution. He knew that Jesus would reconcile creation back to the Father. And when we talk about God's redemptive plan, we need to kind of analyze what all does it include. So God's redemptive plan required that Christ would suffer greatly. He was despised, rejected, talked about, mocked, beaten beyond recognition, abused, murdered, and betrayed. Now, think about that. In his free will, Christ, also God, the Trinity, all of them being God in one, him being all knowing and choosing suffering, because with him coming into a earthly vessel, he had a wisdom to know that in order for his Father to be glorified in heaven, he would have to suffer greatly. So what we're seeing is that suffering is often, if not all the time, a part of the story. It's a part of the equation. It is just a part of life, and it's a result of being in a fallen and corrupt world. So while his suffering was unimaginable, the plan was never for Jesus to stay dead. So think about it. It's as if God knows the end of the story. Spoiler alert, he does. It's as if he knows how the story is going to end. When everybody checked the tomb on the third day, it was empty. So with him knowing how the story would end, that he would rise with all power in his hand, that he would be able to restore creation, restore humanity, that we have the choice to embrace our life with God and embrace suffering with God, and knowing that it isn't the end. That's very redemptive. Not only was the tomb empty on the third day, but Jesus so not only was the tomb empty on the third day, Jesus snatched the keys and the power of death from Satan. He defeated every evil principality, and he righted every wrong in the heavenlies, so that no matter what, we would have the victory. And this is where faith comes in, because if we look at the situations, if we walk by sight instead of by faith, it will look like we losing. It'll look like evil is winning. It will look like evil has the final say. And this is a part of the mystery of the faith. A lot of times it involves grappling with things that are very painful and things that shouldn't be. But even though situations are that way, when we walk by faith, we can walk with the reality that God has the final say, that vengeance is mine, says the Lord, that God sits high and he looks low, that God doesn't fret or worry when we're in some of the most toughest, the most unimaginable circumstances. Instead of like worrying and scratching his head as if he doesn't know the answer, he sits high. So we have to remember that and put things in perspective. Because if we do believe what we see, and this is very challenging, I'm not gonna hold you, because I know when you in a situation that's like urgent, you need help, you need deliverance, you need to be rescued, and the help is tarrying. It's not coming immediately, and you have to sit in that uncomfortable place, that unbearable place, without the solution manifesting here. And that is a reality. It's a part of the story. So just like Jesus being beaten and abused and whipped and murdered, just like that was a part of the story. But that's not how the story ended. So if Jesus didn't know how the story would end, he would have never left heaven to live a life of sorrow and suffering here on earth. But he did it because of his love for humanity, because of his love for people and the earth and his creation. So he put everything on the line for redemption. So, what is redemption, you might ask? Well, Oxford tells us that it is the action of regaining or gaining possession of something in exchange for payment or clearing a debt. Another definition is that it is Another definition is that it is the action of saving or being saved from sin or evil. Now, because sin entered into the world, it allowed for our world to be broken and filled with suffering. That's just the matter of fact of the situation. However, when we choose, and I'm talking about people who have chosen and accepted Christ, when they make that decision, they are believing that no matter what, I'm redeemed. I might look the same physically, but I'm a new creature. Um, the world might be burning up in flames, but I have the peace that God is greater than every circumstance. And this world, this reality that I'm living in is not the end. So I've touched on this in prior videos. Feel free to check those out. But I've touched on this before. There is a reality of the spiritual realm. There are evil spirits and forces that roam around to and fro, poisoning people's minds, their hearts, and influencing them to do evil. As a result, we all have fallen short of the glory of God. And we all have allowed the works of evil to be expressed inside of us in one way or another. Now, even though that's the case, the intent was never for us to stay in the dark. God's love and light literally chases us down so that we can choose his redemption. And this is important because God gives us free will. When you think about the relationships and the friendships that you want to have and that you want to cultivate, more times than not, you want it to be healthy. You want both people to show up, to show effort, to be consistent and making plans, checking in, just being that sort of support. You want that person or people to choose to show up in a way that shows that they love you, that they want you in their lives, and that they care. And it would be a different story if someone paid the person or paid the group or made it an obligation for that person or those people to be kind and show up and make plans and make dates. Because if they were doing it out of obligation or because they're being paid, reaping some sort of benefit for their own gain, it's not real love. It's not true love. So it's the same with us. God gives us the choice to believe him, the choice to follow his ways, to seek him, and the choice to allow his love to transform us. Just like that is an option, so is choosing the works of the enemy. Now, we do have a free will and we do have a conscience. We make thousands of decisions daily, and many times we make them out of habit without even giving them a second thought. With our free will, we often choose hatred, selfishness, envy, greed, lust, overindulgence, and many other things that God frowns upon. And when we give into these urges of our flesh and of our sinful nature, we're permitting evil to spread and to be expressed through our actions, even if we don't know about it. That's just the way it works. If you're in deception and you haven't experienced the light and the truth to kind of infiltrate areas of your lives and habits and things that you engage with, more times than not, you are expressing something that isn't aligned with the plan of God and the will of God. So the wages of sin is death, meaning that choosing to sin results in spiritual death. Now, we all have to die. And I mean, unless the Lord comes back while we here and we can just go up there to heaven. But if Christ doesn't come back in our lifetime, then we all have to go up to yonder. Mm-hmm. We all got to die. So the other part of dying is spiritual death. And this is separation from the Father. So God is ultimate holiness. He is perfection. There's no wrong about him. So because of his nature, he can't engage with sin. Sort of why when Jesus was on the cross and he took on the weight of our sin, he experienced that separation from his Father. Because God couldn't commune with that sinfulness. So for that time frame, God's face wasn't shining on his only son. So it's like, same with us. And because God is perfect, he could have chosen to let us stay separated from him because we don't deserve him. Nobody did. We've all fallen short. And by itself, that would disqualify us from having a relationship with God. But because of God's redemptive plan, he chose to send his son and he chose to restore us and to connect us. And now we can experience the grace and the mercy of God so that we don't have to stay in sin. We don't have to stay separated from the love and the truth of God. We don't have to stay in deception because of redemption. Now, God made the choice to send his son, Jesus, and Jesus chose to die for us while we were still sinners and while we were still content with our own sinfulness and evil. And also, he died for us without the guarantee that we would choose him and that we would choose to walk with him. And that's very big of Jesus to do. Because it's like, he died for people and some people that don't want anything to do with him. But because of his love for humanity, he said that was worth it. So he gives us the choice and the option to choose him and choose reconciliation and choose redemption. You feel me? Now that Christ has completed his redemptive work, we can choose to accept him and let his spirit transform us. And we can choose to neglect our sinful nature and nourish our spirit. It's only when we do this that redemption becomes possible. Because again, that free will is creating a space for us to choose a different route. We can choose to believe in the goodness of God and his promises and his ways that are higher than ours. So yeah. So I know oftentimes our circumstances and our struggles and our suffering, it can make us think that God doesn't care about us, that he don't give a lickety split about us or our situation. And sometimes that can even lead you to thinking that God hates you. Now, instead of choosing to believe that, what would happen if we chose to believe that God wants to use our struggles to perfect our faith? What if we chose to believe that another person's sin against us isn't the end of the story? And what if we trusted the reality that the very thing that the enemy formed to take us out is what God would use to bring glory to his name and help other people who have experienced the same things? And for me personally, those were very important questions for me to explore because, I mean, obviously I'm being matured and pruned and all those beautiful things. They don't feel beautiful, but it is a beautiful process. And I've been being matured to kind of move me on about how I feel about the circumstances and to move towards what I believe about God and what I have experienced of his goodness. And that is a choice. I could have very well chosen to be like, bye, I'm out of here. Because this isn't giving very much. You have a future and a hope for me and that you want to prosper me. It's given you want to throw me up in a dungeon and let me rot.
Yikes.
Sometimes. I could have made that choice to believe that about God and to forsake his word and what he said that he would do in my life. However, the faith and the hope that is inside of me has caused me, and also from what I have seen before, like at some point I'm gonna get into my testimony, but I don't look like what I've been through. Um, so just knowing what God has brought me through and what he has the power to do in my life, I have that evidence, and I also have the hope and the belief that God is going to do what he said he would do. That there is a promised land for me, that I do have a spiritual inheritance, that the glory that I have yet to experience is much greater than the temporary sufferings that I'm facing. And I can choose to actually embrace suffering. Um, Now, that's how you know that I've done some growing and maturing, because me embracing suffering, you know, that math in the past wouldn't have added up. But now I'm seeing the equation play out. You hear me? I'm entering an embrace in suffering and a calculator, and it's coming up with something. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, that's where some of the greatest lessons that I've learned have come from. They haven't come from when things have gone my way, even though obviously that's my preference. But it doesn't come from when stuff is easy and I just acquire it. And no, it comes from like a challenge. It comes from me actually working towards something and not giving up. That sort of delayed gratification, that is what sticks in my experience. So I said all this to say, y'all, if you don't take nothing else from this video, my hope and my prayer is that you would be willing to see the good that God might be trying to do within a difficult circumstance. He might be trying to free you from something that has been affecting people in your family, in your bloodline. He might be taking you through a trial so that you can overcome it and so that everyone after you, your children, your descendants, and even the people who are still living, so that they can glean from you and your experience and that they can be empowered to overcome it as well. He might be trying to shake it up. Shake it up. He might be trying to shake up some of those patterns, some of those things that you feel like you can't live without. He might be trying to take down idols and altars that you've been building up or that have been built up in your family line. He might be trying to shake that up so that he can make room for for the blessing and the inheritance that he has for you. There's all kind of things that God might be wanting to do in you. Heal you of things that you wouldn't even think healing is possible for. For people whose outlook has been affected by trauma and pain and heartache, he might be wanting to restore that, make you whole in those areas, um, so that he can bring goodness into your life. If you're currently navigating and living out a life that reflects the hurt that you've experienced, well, number one, hurt people hurt people. So if God were to bring those good things, those people into your life, it's likely that you're going to bleed on them and that you're going to recreate the harm that you've experienced for those people because you can't help yourself because that's how you're operating. So it's possible that God might bring you through a situation to address those wounds, those very things that you want to just push down and be like, I'll deal with that later. He said, no, let's deal with it now. Because, baby girl, I have stuff for you now. I have so many things that I want to release to you. And it's on the other side of the suffering, it's on the other side of the wilderness. So, yeah, y'all, I just encourage y'all to keep going. Don't give up. Fight the good fight. And can we start to normalize believing God, like believing what He said, like believing that His word won't return to Him void, believing the good report? Because I don't know about y'all. Obviously, it takes time and healing and growth and maturation and all these things. But it makes me very much less anxious to think about something going well or to just release control and my attachment to it than to keep playing out, oh, what if this happened and this ain't gonna happen and I need to do this, and when I can just be like, you know what? It's not in my control. And if God said that He's gonna provide my needs, then He's gonna do it. These ain't my bills to pay. If He's gonna provide my needs, then it's His bills. So guess what? Yes, I'm going to practice healthy stewardship of what He's given me, but I'm not about to be stressing myself out the game. Maybe I got to stay in the game and in the fight so that I can get my crown, so that I can get my win. And that's what I want for all of us. So, yeah, y'all. I hope that this blessed you, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon in the next one. Bye.